Okay, so we're going to do some deep tissue techniques. And remember, you're not going to do all of this. I'm going to show you neck techniques. We're going to relieve a client's neck pain. That's what they're here for today. We're going to envision that's what they're here, that's what they complained about. So we first want to connect with the client. And that means helping them tune into their breath. So let's take 3 nice deep breaths together and really put our collective energy together and let them just feel your intention. As we inhale and exhale together with our client. Good. And if you can, do it for a count of 8 and teach your client how to do the 8 inhale, 8 exhale, which is a balanced breath. With the inhale, you should see the rise of their belly, and with their exhale, and chest, and with the exhale, you should see that compressing. Good.
The elevation and depression.
Yes. So, just like we're introducing our touch to our client, I want you to take your 3 fingertips, right, and get into that mastoid process. And start to really let yourself rock into going a little bit deeper into that mastoid process. We want to warm it up a little bit. What attaches there? Yes.
Good job, Steph.
Good job.
Steph is on point today.
Fire. So we want to make sure we start to loosen that up, especially because right now, what we first want to do is we're going to loosen the SCM. Most people don't have their SCM worked on predominantly in a Swedish. We gloss over it with our Effleurage, but we don't do a whole lot of work there, but we want to loosen the attachment site. Do you feel how I'm going a little deeper than you've had it before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so don't be afraid. Make sure you know where you are, and you can see I'm sinking in here, right? I don't know if you can see that, Michael, from your angle. Melissa, can you see I'm really kind of sinking in? I'm letting my body do the work. I am not muscling it. I'm letting my body do the work, and I'm going to show you from this side. Can you see that, Katie and Kat, where I'm really letting myself just kind of sink in there?
I found the trigger point.
And you might, and that's good. So you'll make a mental note of that for later. But we can see, and I'm feeling more tightness on this side. Now you're going to start to differentiate. Are they tighter on one side than the other? Which side might be their issue?
Do they lean? Because then it's stiffer, because it's trying to accommodate for them.
Or do they carry a big heavy pocketbook all the time on one side of their body versus another one?
Or a baby.
Or a baby, right? Or many other things. Tool box, if they're a contractor. We have to think along those lines. So we're really starting to loosen that SCM up at the attachment sites. Now start to work your way down that muscle and be mindful. We don't want to go into the anterior neck where that's an endangerment site.
If you feel a thump thump, that's a bad sign.
We want to kind of stay on that muscle and allow yourself to feel your way to the sternoclavicular attachment sites of the SCM. Are you comfortable, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. And the minute you go too far anteriorly, medially, they're going to feel it because they're going to feel it on their trachea. You're going to feel like you're...
Someone's choking me.
We don't want that, right? Now, when you get to that sternoclavicular attachment site, you want to just let yourself lean in a little bit. Again here, you might have to change your hand position. And just be mindful of where your fingertips are related to breast tissue so that we're not going anywhere near that. So you're just mindful of that hand position.
Long fingers, watch them.
Mm-hmm. Good. So we've started to loosen that muscle. Now I want to turn the head from one side to the other.
Slow and
Okay. Lateral rotation. And before we use any lotion, I want you to just feel along that SCM. One of the things that you should take note of with your clients on the table is that their body should be nice and straight as you're working on them, so that you don't, give them all this relief, but meanwhile their body was crooked or torqued on the table. And one of the ways that you can take a look, what's the distance from the shoulders to the center of the table, but also we want to look at the plumb line. And when we do postural analysis work, which we will do soon, you'll see we're going to measure that plumb line, and the plumb line from the SCM should run straight down their sternum and straight down the body so that it's in between the knees and the feet pretty evenly. It's going to be hard to tell on some clients, but what I want you to do right now that you've palpated the SCM, is I want you to put if we roll laterally rotated to the left, that's great. So put your hand under the head, but don't cup their ears so they're not hearing the seashell and the seashore. the seashore and the seashell. And we're going to lift their head just straight up to the ceiling to see where we can get to the meat of that SCM. You see how it pops a little bit? Now, if you still are having a hard time finding it, you can take your hands off and ask them to lift their ear towards the ceiling. Chris, can you just lift your head and your ear towards the ceiling? See that muscle, how it isolates? And now we can literally grab a hold of that muscle, just at the meat of the muscle, and relax your head. And we can feel the meat of that muscle. Were you able to grasp it a little bit? Were you able to grasp it a little bit? Right? And even if it is because it's new for you, first time we're grasping an SCM like this, we're feeling for anomalies. We're feeling for trigger points. But we want to make sure that the client is in a plumb line. So let's do it one more time. If you don't mind, pick your ear up toward the ceiling. And you see where her SCM is? Okay, release. And it literally is in line with her sternum. If her head were too far forward, or too far back, or turned, it wouldn't align. And then the more we do the deeper work, we might actually add stress or tension instead of taking it away. So we always want to align that plumb line and make sure that we have the client's head in the right position before we start doing all of the deeper work that we're going to do on the neck. Make sense? Good. And then just a little drop. Up.
I guess she lied.
Yeah. Good. So now I want to go in a little bit deeper because I am going to feel for.
Small amount.
Yeah, you don't need a lot.
Dime size of anything.
It's lotion, so it'll probably absorb faster.
Yes. And lotion usually does absorb more quickly than the cream. Cream is what we are typically using, but we want to use, yes, for a full body Swedish. And now I want you to really effleurage, like you want to warm up that tissue. So I'm using more fullness of fingertips, and Chris, I want you to tell me if at any point the pressure is too much for you to please let me know that, okay?
Okay.
Now, because we are going deeper than we do in a Swedish, let yourself sink into that tissue. Feel it warming. Do you feel it warming? And as you allow that tissue to warm, I am just letting my body rock into this. That's all I'm doing. I'm letting it warm. I'm letting it warm up. And as you're letting it warm up, come back to the attachment site at the mastoid process. You can start to feel a little bit more, it feels a little looser than when I started. And I'll let you do the other side so you can feel. You okay with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't want to be on the van.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I feel like I can see it better.
So I can either go next if we do it, or
And then get the attachment site on the sternum and the clavicle. So you're going to go a little bit deeper as but here, remember, you're working with the clavicle, and you want to work just a little bit more intentionally. And we have some nice hyperemia happening as we loosen that. Good. Now, whenever we work deeply, just like we have to warm it up first, we want to make sure we flush it out afterwards. So here you might want to take a little bit of lotion and really do some nice effleurages to flush out that deep work we did. Right? And you're really just leaning into it. 3 nice effleurages. Bring your head back. And do a little occipital release here, a little bit of traction. Just hook your fingertips into that occiput in the space in between the superior nuchal line and the inferior nuchal line. So you're letting yourself sink in more deeply than typically in a Swedish. Is that pressure okay for you, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel how that might be a little bit deeper than a typical Swedish that you've learned so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right? So, and you're letting, just kind of hanging out there for a moment. Good.
Like how?
Good. And now we'll go on over to the other side and do the other side, right? Because we want to loosen whatever we do on one side of the body, we want to typically do on the other. We want to keep them equal. And the only difference is when you are working on a particular issue with a client where you really are applying that deep tissue work, you're going to work less on the unaffected side. You're only going to work on the affected side to assess what the affected side feels like and why it feels different to the client. So you're getting that assessment. And we didn't stop to ask our clients if they had an affected versus an unaffected side today because we're just learning. But keep that in mind for future. If a client says, oh, my left neck is killing me, you'll start on the right neck. And then you'll just work on that to assess, and then, but you'll do most of your work and more time spent on the left side. And in Chris's case, her left is definitely tighter. So we chose the right side to work on first, Chris. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris feels that. So again, now starting that at the mastoid process, work the attachment site there, and then work down the muscle. And typically we're using the little circular friction, little cross fiber friction. Stabilize the head with your other hand. Just working down that muscle in a circular fashion. Feeling what I'm feeling along the way. Feel a couple little trigger points there we'll work on another day. That's for another class. And here's where, you know, especially in a session with a client, you'll make these mental notes for yourself that you're going to soak note so that you can say to the client at the end of the session, hey, I did find a couple of trigger points on that left SCM. We didn't have time to work on them today, but let's rebook you now for a 90-minute session soon where we can do that trigger point work and release those trigger points.
And take your time.
And we can take our time then, right? Now we're pretty much assessing. So we're right in the meat of the muscle there. Good. Now, with this side, what I want you to do is assess that SCM line again, that plumb line that we talked about. So ask your partner to pick their ear up toward the ceiling so you can see right where that SCM is, right? And just grasp it a little bit if you can, grasp it, and then you can release your head down to the table. And you can really feel the meat of the muscle. And in Chris's case, that's kind of where her trigger points are that we'll work on, and we'll make a mental note for tomorrow or the next day or whenever we're doing that. But we can do a little bit more of that cross fiber friction. Remember, when you're using your thumbs, they're not at right angles. Make sure they're in line and they're straight and flat so that you're not going to blow them out in any way. Don't overdo it. Rock into it. And you're allowing yourself to go deeper, right? More deeply than when you are doing your Swedish massage. And then find your way back to those attachment sites, right at the clavicle and at the sternum. So you can work those attachment sites just a little bit with some cross fiber friction, loosening up that muscle before we get into our deeper occipital work. I could spend 2 hours on somebody's neck. I could have somebody spend 2 hours on my neck.
But it's not the same shape.
Okay, so now that you've done some of that deeper work, now take some lotion and do some Effleurage to really make sure it's nice and warm before we go and do some of those occipital releases. And feel the warmth of the tissue. And you may be able to even see some of that nice hyperemia. And now that you've gone a little deeper, those trigger points are popping right into my hand, Chris. Because they're just there. You want to feel them?
Yeah.
Okay. So just lean in.
That's okay. You want me to pause it?
Yeah.